So we've made it pretty clear that the current odds to win the Heisman look nothing like the preseason odds. Yes, you know, a certain Manning was once on this list, but let's focus instead on who is on it now. And how about the guy at the top and the guy that we chose to feature with the photo? That is Indiana Fernando Mendoza. The Heisman favorite will be on display this Saturday on CBS when his Hoosiers travel to Maryland to take on the Terps. This IU squad is somehow better than last year's, who surprised us all by making a run to the playoff. They are not just winning games, they lead the FBS in points differential, in big part, of course, to that quarterback play, which is why the NFL, they just can't wait to have a piece of him. Fernando Mendoza is second in the odds to be the #1 overall pick, just slightly behind Alabama's Tate Simpson, but there are a lot of great options on the board. So let's ask our friend Ryan Wilson who his prospects to watch are. He's got the binoculars out. I think he's like wiping them off or something. Just making sure that you can see clearly, right, Ryan Wilson? All right, well, I know that you can see Fernando Mendoza pretty clearly, especially when he's playing in primetime on CBS this Saturday. So what is it that you've seen that makes him worthy of a #1 overall selection in April?
Happy Halloween, Emily. Good to see you. I always forget that stupid graphic that producer Noah created, and when it pops up every once in a while, it takes me by surprise. I don't know how to hold binoculars correctly. I can still see through them, though, and what I can see is how good Fernando Mendoza has been this season. And we spent a lot of time over the summer talking about Fernando Mendoza on the podcast because he had played at Cal last year, where he was succeeding under some pretty dire circumstances. That offensive line was not great, and he still was making NFL throws, throwing from the pocket, throwing with great accuracy and arm strength to all three levels. And we've seen him take the next step on a team that is much, much better than that Cal team from 2024. You talked about all the things they've done well thus far for Coach Cignetti there. And what Fernando Mendoza has been able to do is to parlay that not only into the top of the Heisman conversation, but as likely QB1 as we sit here, Tate Simpson, whose name we've seen has only played one season, a half a season technically at Alabama. Fernando has a ton of experience and some not great experience. And a lot of times when you get drafted at the top of the draft, Emily, you're going to bad teams. Mendoza has shown that he can play at a high level on not great teams. This year has been the exception. So he has checked every single box that you want to see from a quarterback who you're considering taking top 1 or 2. And a team at the top that makes the most sense, as we sit here, the Saints. They have Tyler Shuck, who played last week. I don't think that's going to matter if they still have a top 5 pick. Of course, the Jets are going to be in the conversation. The Browns have 2 first-round picks. And maybe even the Raiders, who have a pick inside the top 10 as we sit here, might try to move up to get a player like this.
Yeah, a lot, of course, has to do with the way that the draft board lays out and who is picking where. But ultimately, I think it was a surprise that he was on some of those Heisman lists, but definitely not a surprise that he's been projected as a top prospect. As you said, you've been talking about it all summer long. Somebody that definitely did not come out of nowhere, Miami edge, Rueben Bain. He will be playing against SMU this weekend. I thought maybe with the quarterback position up in the air that he could be a possibility to go #1 overall, but he's 4th in the odds. So what do you like about him?
Here's the issue with Rueben Bain Jr., and it's nothing to do with the on-field productivity because it has been out of this world, insane in some instances with how good he has been. When you look at edge rushers drafted in the top 5 over the last 15 years or so, they're typically about 6'4", 265, and have 33 to 34-inch arms. And I mention all those numbers because Rueben Bain's going to be under 6'3". He's every bit at 275, but he may have short arms, quotation marks, by NFL standards for edge rushers. You watch him play, there is no indication that he lacks in physicality in any way, shape, or form, and we have seen that week in and week out. He has been unstoppable at times. That Louisville game 2 weeks ago perhaps was the exception, but even the best players in the world, Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt, aren't on every single play. Rueben Bain Jr., to your point, Emily, has played well enough to be a #1 overall consideration based on his productivity if a team is not looking for a quarterback in that slot. I think ultimately he ends up going top 10, but it is hard to argue with how good he has been this year and taking his game a step up from what we saw even last season. He just turned 21. He's a junior, so he could come back if he wants to. I don't know if that's going to be in the cards, but if you're a team looking for edge rush help, the Tennessee Titans make a ton of sense. They have their quarterback in Cam Ward, but they are struggling virtually everywhere else. The Miami Dolphins, who we saw sort of play a football game last night, can be in the mix. And even the Baltimore Ravens, who did play a football game last night against those Dolphins, need help along the edge. So those are some teams to look for, at least as we sit here 2 months through the NFL season.
And you currently have him going 2 to the Bengals. Is that correct?
Yep. And they need it too.
A lot of teams could use that help across the defensive line that will overlook those short arms to have him on their defense. Well, Ryan, it seems like death taxes and Ohio State wide receivers, and Carnell Tate is the next one up. When we watch him Saturday against Penn State, what can we expect to see from this top prospect?
Emily, he is so good. And I get excited talking about Carnell Tate because, again, when we did our summer scouting, I liked him, but I wasn't ready to put him in the same conversation with those long list of Ohio State wide receivers we've talked about the last 2 or 3 years. Certainly not Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Crystal Olave, the list goes on and on. Even J-Mo before he transferred to Alabama. This year, he very much deserves to be in the conversation among elite Ohio State wide receivers over the past seasons. If he went as wide receiver 1, I would not be shocked. Jordan Tyson's going to be in that conversation, of course. But I absolutely love what he has done this year. He is every bit of 6'3", 195. He plays mostly on the outside, but he can play inside of the slot. He will consistently stack defensive backs on vertical routes. He wins on in-breaking and out-breaking routes. He gets out of those routes like he's a much smaller, shiftier wide receiver. And then if the ball is in the area, and by that I mean basically 8 feet within his catch radius, he is going to come down with it. We saw Julian Sagan's name on that list for the Heisman candidates. Carnell Tate has a lot to do with that success, and he has been such a revelation this year and is an example of someone who can take that next step as they progress through their college career. The Giants, Malik Neighbors, unfortunately ACL, so that makes some sense. Arizona teaming back up with Marvin Harrison Jr. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have been looking for a wide receiver 2 from the moment they moved on from George Pickens.
Yeah, Tate doesn't get a lot of the love because he's playing opposite of Jeremiah Smith, but we had the pleasure of seeing him play in person against Wisconsin, and some of those catches he was making just absolutely ridiculous. So somebody kind of under the radar, but not when you're an Ohio State wide receiver. Meanwhile, Notre Dame plays at Boston College this Saturday. We're going to tell you to keep an eye out for an Irish running back, but it's not Jeremiah Love, it's Jadarian Price. What's his evaluation as an NFL prospect?
Yeah, a little Halloween Day curveball. No Jeremiah Love for this segment here, but Jadarian Price, number 24, the quote-unquote other running back. I will say this, and I don't even know if this is controversial. When you talk to folks in the league, they will tend to agree. Jadarian Price runs with better vision behind the line of scrimmage than Jeremiah Love does. And you see that in the way that he hits these holes, accelerates through these holes, and then he just runs through arm tackles the rest of the way down the field until he can be gang tackled by 2 or 3 or 4 players, usually 10 to 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. The issue is this, and it's not really an issue. I don't think they choose to use him this way. He's only been targeted 2 times in the pass game this year, so you don't really know what you have as a receiver coming out of the backfield. But I know he can catch because he returns kicks, and he had a 102-yard kick return for a touchdown against USC a few weeks ago in that Rain Bowl. So wet conditions, still making plays with his hands. He is a versatile back. I think he's a day 2 guy as we sit here should he decide to come out. He is also a junior. And the Dallas Cowboys are obviously the team that needs a running back. The New England Patriots could use some help there if they're not happy with Ramondre Stevenson, who struggles with fumbles at times. And the Washington Commanders could also be in the running back business once the draft rolls around.
Don't worry, I've seen college analysts, too, try to make the case for Price being a potentially better running back in some certain situations, and they kind of do it under the radar a little bit just because it's tough to make that statement considering how good the other guy is. But why can't they both be great? Let's finish, though, on a prospect that maybe not a whole lot of people know a lot about, and that is Duke right tackle Brian Parter II. He and his Blue Devils visit Clemson, which great test going against that Clemson D. So why is he a prospect to watch?
Yeah, so let's throw another little curveball here, a name that probably wasn't on a lot of folks' radar unless you're a huge Duke fan or Brian Parker II's family. He is the right tackle for the Duke Blue Devils. He played right tackle all last year in 2024. And this season he's played right tackle. And Emily, I mentioned that to say that he has given up as many sacks in 2 seasons as you and I have for the Duke Blue Devils. That's how consistently good he has been. He is 6'5". He's unofficially about 305. I think he plays much stronger than that. And while 305 sounds like a lot, typically right tackles or left tackles in the NFL, you probably want them to be 10 or 15 pounds, a little heavier than that. He does not play like he is 305. And, you know, he is one Parker in this game. He'll be going up against the other Parker that we've spent a ton of time talking about, and TJ Parker, the edge rusher for Clemson. Of course, the Clemson Tigers have had a rough season. They would certainly love a do-over. TJ has played at a high level. He is going to be a first-round pick. It'll be a great test for Brian Parker II. And I don't know if this sounds crazy or not, or is as crazy as seeing Jadarian Price is neck and neck with Jeremiah Love. I think Parker the Duke Parker has a chance to also be a first-round pick, and this game will go a long way in helping evaluators see how good he can be against NFL-type edge rushers. So he has been a lot of fun to watch so far this season, and I expect him to pass this test with flying colors as well.
Yeah, Parker the second, his dad, Brian Parker, was a pretty good tight end in the NFL, so always love those lineages. Ryan Wilson, thank you so much for breaking down some of those top prospects for us. And if you want more early draft talk, well, Ryan and the crew are doing it all week long with the With the First Pick podcast. You can watch by scanning that QR code or listen wherever you find your pods.